Well, I'm excited to welcome you both. This panel, Pioneers of Progress, Stories of Resilience, Impact, and Transformation. Uh, you both have really interesting stories, so I'll just jump into it real quick. Jariatu is the co-founder of Black Tech Columbus. She's on a mission to foster community and innovation in Central Ohio. Black Tech Columbus has been around for a few years now, and they do a lot of events in the community. When Jariatu isn't working, she volunteers on local boards and works with youth organizations to teach technology and design thinking to K-12 students. Um, Aaron Westbrook is the founder of Form5 Prosthetics, which is emerging as a pioneer in prosthetics, um, in all based from Columbus, Ohio. Um, Form5 was founded in 2015. Aaron was born with only one hand, and his journey into the prosthetics began as a freshman at New Albany High School, which is when I got an email about what Aaron was doing in high school several years ago. Um, After personally encountering the limitations and gaps in upper limb prosthetics, Aaron created Form5 to uh, deliver these prosthetics to other people who suffer from similar conditions. So there's a bike arm, and there's other use cases inside the home that Aaron has created this invention for. So super excited to welcome you both, and thank you for joining the Innovation Conference today. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. I'm grateful to be here. Thanks for inviting me to sit on the panel. It's very exciting.
Yeah, likewise. Very grateful to have the opportunity to share about the innovative work that we're doing and the way that we're changing lives.
So for those who don't know Aaron, let's just kind of start from day one. How did your personal journey inspire the creation of Form5, and what are some challenges that you faced along the way?
Yeah, I think really the genesis of Form5 is just the way I've navigated my life with one hand. I think there's so many circumstances that people with disabilities have had to kind of hack their way through life. And I think as an organization, we recognize the innovation of people with disabilities and the way that they navigate the world in their own unique way. And so how can we take some of those back of the napkin sketches, those duct tape devices, and turn them into something tangible that not only empower that one individual, but then empower lots of individuals. And I think a lot of the growth and success of Form5, I think, has been, unlocking the potential and the mindset and capability of those that we serve. And I think in many ways, in starting Form5, that's kind of like how I've been able to do that for myself. Because there's so many times I think, challenges and things that I've faced. I think it's very easy to fall into that negative thought pattern of thinking I can't do X, Y, Z because I only have one hand. And there's so many things in my life that I can look back on now and think, wow, there was a time where I didn't think I would be able to do that. And I've accomplished that and so many things following it. And so it's hard for me to pinpoint. I think a lot of it is just having that like self-assurance and the confidence in yourself and your own abilities, and just tackling the things that you love.
Love that. The community support as well, I think is great. And someone like yourself, you really leaned into that, but also you're very coachable and have humility. So I think that's one important trait for any young founder. Because what age did you start this company?
Yeah, so I started Form5 when I was 14. And when I look back at that time in my life, I think being an entrepreneur an entrepreneur founder takes incredible courage. And like, that's not something a lot of 14-year-olds have. And when I look back at that time, I never thought I would ever see a 3D printer, let alone be able to like learn to use one at that age. And I just remember a lot of things happening by fate at the beginning of starting Form5. And I just remember the first time I was like, there's only one teacher at my school who knows how to use the technology, who has a key to that room where the printer is. And I just couldn't help myself but like knock on his door and be like, hey, you don't know me at all. I'm not one of your students. I've never taken any of your classes. I just know you're the guy with the key. And this is my idea and this is what I want to do. And I think there's so many times that I've thought back to that moment of just having the courage of like, it's not going to hurt to ask. That's kind of the first kind of inquiry and exploration opens the door for things your imagination could have never thought of.
Yeah, no, I love that. Jariatu, coming to you with Black Tech Columbus, I think you know, I grew up in Columbus, so from your perspective, I'm interested in you know, what was the idea behind the origination of Black Tech Columbus? Obviously, you've been able to receive support from large institutions in Columbus. You know, financially as well. So what do you see from there, receiving support, and to where we are today? What's your assessment there?
Well, so Black Tech Columbus, there were originally 11 founders. There's a large group of us. I would say my personal journey in getting to the point where it was something that I became passionate about creating in the city was I wanted to get into technology. I didn't know how. My family is all works in healthcare, right? They're all healthcare practitioners in some kind of way. Never knew about technology, never knew about how to get into it. Took a couple business classes in high school, but didn't know about it as a career path. And so I spent a year going to every single tech meetup event that I could find on Google or Eventbrite, and was just going into a lot of these spaces. And outside of not necessarily seeing a lot of people that look like me or shared my non-traditional background for getting into technology, a lot of the spaces just felt I don't want to say stale, but they didn't feel welcoming or inviting if you didn't already have a foothold in that space or if you didn't already have a large network within that space. And so my motivation really was I wanted to hold tech centered events where anyone, whether you've been in technology for 20 years or you just learned about it and want to get into it, have a comfortable and culturally relevant environment to kind of connect and learn that information while you're also expanding your network and getting to know other people. So that was really the genesis of Black Tech Columbus. It just started as literally a meetup. One of the 11 of us created a flyer. We rented out or like we reserved a basement bar in downtown Columbus, and 200 people showed up on a random Wednesday. And so it was really it was insane.
Incredible.
And some people, people were like, this is the club. And I was like, no, it wasn't the intention. But there was an overwhelming amount of like support and just a validation that there was a desperate need for that level of community building that looks different from a traditional business environment. Columbus is very good at a lot of things. Innovation is not always one of them. And I know that's something that we don't like kind of gets talked over or skirted about because we're trying, but I feel like you have to fully acknowledge your areas of opportunity if you're ever going to fully step into them. And so I think that's one of the major strengths that as an organization we've been able to lean on is that we're always trying to be forward thinking about how do we engage people? How do we include people in this space? How do we not only leverage people with opportunities, but also put them in position to provide opportunities and information to other people? So
I love that. It's
Love that. And
meeting people where
yeah,
they are, I think, is at core. And I think that's just so powerful.
yeah, for sure.
yeah, definitely. I think there's a rhetoric that DEI is done, is over. And I really think the conversation is more about shifting, whereas organizations, they want to empower Black, minority, founders with disabilities. It's more about empowering those founders or institutions that are already doing the work. And I think in both of your cases, you both, I guess would fall into that bucket from a corporate standpoint. But however, you have a proven experience in history of doing the work. So I guess, like a twofold question in terms of, because I do think Columbus is a great city in terms of recognizing and supporting founders. Obviously, we probably all wish it could happen a little bit quicker. But in terms of DEI and what you're seeing in terms of corporate support, how do you look at this year, and kind of what thoughts would you share for anyone going into next year?
Sure, I can start. This is what I say all the time, and so I'll repeat it now. I think a lot of times when people when people hear the term DEI and they think about DEI, they automatically think about race and gender. But the reality is, if you look at the workforce, from 30 years ago, right, it was a very specific type of person, and all of the processes and systems and benefits and environments have been built around that very specific type of person. And now, and you look at who's working, the reality is no one fits in that, right? Even the stereotypical, if you want to come down to it, middle-aged white male, they don't fit into that stereotype. And I think what people don't realize is that when we talk about DEI, we're not just talking about people that look differently than you, or people have a different gender or sexual orientation. We're talking about people at every single intersection of their life, right? So whether you have a non-traditional background, whether you are taking a caretaker for children or an older person, maybe your parents are aging out, whether you do have some type of physical or mental handicap or a different ability, like, everyone's existing at an intersection. And especially working as a product consultant, which is my actual tech job, right? You realize very quickly that, like, you have to understand the niches of where people are falling. And the more we learn about our external users that we create products and services for, we have to have that same level of, like, curiosity and introspection about the people that work for us. And so when we talk about DEI and you talk about, to your point, empowering those people and recognizing talent and supporting founders who do that, it's about recognizing that when you support organization like mine or Aaron's, it's not just about, hey, we're gonna, use this paintbrush and only affect these small amount of people. It makes you stronger as an organization because it makes you better at serving everyone, right? Like, there is someone who in your office who maybe has a pregnant spouse, or they themselves are going to experience pregnancy, and how do they navigate being a caretaker, even though they still really want to show up for their job? Maybe that means they show up a little bit earlier, and maybe that means you structure meetings differently, but you have to be open to the conversation in order to become effective. And it can be scary. I know that, because there are a lot of people who are very extreme, but I think a lot of the founders at this conference that you're hosting and a lot of the panels are really good examples of the fact that most people are meeting you where you're at, and they're meeting you in the middle. So I think that's a great place to start, to your point, Manny, by supporting organizations who are actively doing it, because we're already entrenched in it, and there's a lot of value to be had even outside of the groups that maybe those specific organizations focus on.
Thank you. Yeah, no, yeah.
Yes.
Well, Aaron, I did have a follow-up for you. You're doing. I've toured Aaron's office, and he has 3D printing set up, and really some cutting edge stuff in manufacturing. Again, all of this is happening in Columbus, Ohio. So Aaron, if someone wanted to get involved, maybe in working with founders in the accessibility space, or maybe getting in manufacturing, I guess, like, what tips do you have for them, where they could start, creating meaningful impact through innovations? What are some ways that you think that they could get started?
Yeah, I mean, I think, kind of echoing what we've been saying, is kind of meeting people where they're at. I think there's so many founders, entrepreneurs who have this, ornate ability to come up with solutions. And a solution is only as good as, the people that it's going to actually solve the problem for. And I think starting at the problem and understanding and dissecting and working with folks, we're very big as an organization on, human-centered design. And through that, human-centered design process, we try to understand, not just the one problem that one person might come to us with, but there might be some adjacent obstacles and barriers that might be more of a leading cause to the problem than we realize. And so I think when we get too focused too soon on the solution, we lose track of how we can help people. And I think that's something that we've been really big on, and just trying to promote through our different programs and just our own process as an organization. I just do want to take a step back and talk about the DEI piece, because I think we need to be more broad about what that looks like. I think, race and gender is the first thing that comes to mind. But disability is never included in the DEI conversation. And I know that there's been kind of this evolution of DEI and the politicization of DEI, And there's some folks that are adding, DEIA or for accessibility or DEIB for belonging, but really we shouldn't need to add an acronym to DEI, because for me, I think disability is diversity. Disability is inclusion. And I think if you broaden the scope of those things, you're actually broadening your impact. You're broadening the people that you're bringing into the fold. And it shouldn't be as complicated, I think, as some people like to make it.
Agreed.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think that's something that hopefully as we go into next year, just echoing what the last panel was saying, that's really a conversation that it becomes normalized, because it is a little bit
Yeah.
outrageous when I sit in some of these meetings. I guess going back to since this is a very Columbus, Ohio centric panel, what are some things that you're looking forward to next year in Columbus, Ohio, and what are some ways do you think that the community could get behind, whether helping Form 5 or another initiative, or with Black Tech Columbus or another initiative that you both are passionate about?
Sure. I will start. I'm excited for next year. I know that a lot of people are worried, they're nervous about what things are going to look like. But at the end of the day, like, I think tough times make tough people. And if you are willing and ready to work and put your money and put your money where your mouth is, then you'll be fine. Right. Will it be hard? Yes. But there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot of traction to make. So I'm excited to see what the next year looks like, because personally, the work that we've been doing at Black Tech for the past 6 years has been nothing but preparation for this, right? To your second point, or to your second question, I think a lot of times organizations, when they think about working with founders of different companies, a lot of times they think about their outward image, like how they're going to present to the public and how they're going to attract new talent. I would really urge companies or encourage companies to really focus inward. There are a lot of people who come to our events and are like, man, I would love if you guys would come to my job. And I think companies really lose sight of how much impact they can have by bringing people inside of their organization and hosting things like lunch and learns or after hours things for their employees, because their employees are actually starving for that, right? Like, a lot of times the focus is how do we get more people in versus how do we fulfill and how do we feel and encourage the people that work for us currently. So I would encourage, find opportunities within your organization to enrich your employees with a lot of the work that companies like mine and Aaron are doing, even Collaborate and Elevate is doing, because they're ready and they're wanting it. And the reality is, when they leave work, they're going out and looking for it, which is how a lot of our companies have grown, right? Because people are coming and looking for those opportunities. And so I really encourage companies to find opportunities within their organizations to incorporate a lot of the work that we're doing to support their employees and make it a better place to work, so that they stay and enjoy their stay there.
That employee engagement piece is huge. I think, post-pandemic, regardless of what format you're going to work and what it looks like, people need that connection. And they especially need that connection to community. And so I echo a lot of that. How can we get into those spaces where we can speak to large groups of employees, even if it's not a large group? A lot of these organizations, companies have ERGs, BRGs that might have a very specific focus. How can we get in front of those folks and engage them in our mission? That's been a big piece of what we're focusing on. And I think, going into next year, I know the last panel was talking about how this kind of being the year of truth. And I look at this year being kind of the year of truth and clarity. I think I'm going into this upcoming year with this new sense of clarity and direction, and very much feel that, everything we've worked on to date has gotten us to where we are now. We're getting ready to launch one of our first products in the marketplace for riding a bicycle. It's huge. This is something that, a lot of people, when you're a young kiddo, riding a bike is like your first taste of freedom. And I think something we've just been thinking more and more about is telling the stories of those that we work with. I feel so fortunate and blessed to have started this thing at such a young age, and I've grown it to where it is now. But I think going forward, Form 5's story needs to be more about those we serve. And you got to think about it. I mean, there's kids sitting on the sideline, not playing a sport, There's kids not riding their bike and they're watching their friends go get ice cream because they can't ride their bike that far. I mean, like these little moments, you know, seem small, but they're so foundational. And so we're really excited about advancing that going into next year. And a lot of that is just thanks to the clarity of this year. You know, I've been, you know, rattling around this phrase in my head of like, no grit, no pearl. And I think that's something that this year has really taught me is that, you know, you have to put in the hard work, and the results show up. You might not show up when you want it, but it's happening and it's in progress. And there's so many validating things that happen along the way. And so it's been a really good year, and I'm really looking forward to next year and continuing to build on the growth.
I love that. And since you both work in the nonprofit area, I wanted to get your advice on like volunteerism. I think I read a stat where it's gone down, and I think just going back to employers looking inward, right? I think sometimes having your employees volunteer is really a good way to do that. So I just wanted to see what are you both seeing from a volunteerism perspective. Is that do you see more, what have you seen kind of this year?
I've seen a lot of different trends with volunteerism. I think a lot of it has to be, it's one thing where it's either driven from a corporate level where, we're encouraging all of our employees to get out in the community. I also think there's some personal, excitement around it, and folks kind of find their way to us. I think something that we've seen that's been a success for Form 5, we're such a skills-based organization. And obviously it's very meaningful to go and give back in the community in any capacity. But we see folks who, through their companies are volunteering at the food pantry and supporting different initiatives. But they're like an IT guru, and they're like, I would love to like help an organization and share my IT expertise, and volunteer in a very meaningful, deep way. That is something that's been transformational for us, especially from an engineering design standpoint. I mean, we have folks, who love to do CAD design, and they are like, I would love to volunteer hours to design something, knowing that it's going to help someone, and see that direct impact is a little bit deeper. And so that's kind of been pairing that with the lunch and learns and kind of capturing and getting into those groups that might have those skill sets and expertise. I think volunteerism should be a more ongoing thing and less the quick hit, let's go to the food pantry, take a picture, and move on to the next volunteer opportunity. It's like, how can we get folks engaged in the organizations, and especially matching it with a passion that that individual employee or a group of employees have?
Yeah, I love that. That's a very interesting perspective that I don't think people have spoke about, because when they think of volunteering, they think of food pantries, they think of cleaning up litter and things like that. But in terms of actually sitting down and sharing insights on engineering or finance or things like that, I do think a lot of that, and I could say in my world, definitely I see a lot of that happening.
Yeah.
Jariatu, what about you from your perspective, as well as anything exciting to share from a Black Tech Columbus into 2025?
Absolutely. So I would say very quickly, we never have a shortage of volunteers. I would say I think that's a testament to the fact that we're always a vibe. I've never met anyone who came to a Black Tech event and did have a good time, didn't leave with a new network, partner, friend, associate, whatever. So it's never a shortage of volunteers. I will say, I think we have to be very intentional about making the barrier to entry to volunteerism easier, right? So like we're reducing friction for our customers when it comes to conversion. We need to reduce the friction when it comes to people and giving them opportunities to volunteer. To your point, Aaron, diversifying what that looks like. And so I will say this past year, it's been good for us. Honestly, I will say that. And now, is everyone as consistent? Like, are they volunteering every single time? No, but that's what I mean when I say lowering that barrier to entry. A lot of times we get so passionate about the things that we are working on that we really want everyone to be just as passionate. And the reality is sometimes somebody has one weekend a year You know, they have 2 events in them a year. They have one weekend a month, maybe 2 hours. Finding ways so that people can engage with the organization and volunteer at the pace that makes sense to them. That is what we found has worked the best, and really to capitalize on, and really that's what's maintained our level of volunteerism from our community. I will say upcoming announcements: Black Tech Columbus has officially partnered with Collaborate and Elevate. So powered by the platform and utilizing this space to enhance the experience of our members. So very excited about that going into 2025, and really using that as a launch pad for doing a lot more work and having more impact in Central Ohio. Very excited about it.
No, we're super excited about it as well, and just really connecting the state and entrepreneurs to resources. So really excited. It was, again, great seeing you both last night. I had a really good time, and it was everyone. I was getting so many texts this morning, so really enjoyed the time there. And yeah, thanks again for contributing to the innovation conference this year.